Hi, this is John Gabriel for eFrac Systems. And unless you've been living under a rock the last 10 years, there's little doubt that you've heard about CO2 emissions and your carbon footprint. The government, special interest groups, radio, television, and your neighbors, everyone seems to have taken up the banner of the global warming march. There's a dizzying array of terminology thrown at us, from carbon footprints to sustainability, renewable energy and carbon offsets, neutrality. So when it comes to reducing your carbon emissions, you might not really know where to start. We'll help you with the basics and then give you a few interesting tidbits to chew on that might just help you feel a whole lot better about the process. You can't save the environment all by yourself. It's not individuals that create widespread pollution. Rather, it's the effects of thousands or even millions of folks all lumped together that lead to problems. An example would be good at this point. 100 years ago, the average family used a completely renewable outhouse waste disposal system. They composted, used their gray water on the pesticide-free garden where they grew most of their own food, and that includes the meat they ate in the form of cows and ducks and pigs and chickens that wandered around their property doing their part in being natural, as only animals can be. No one really had cars or lawnmowers, and the environment could absorb every single atom of CO2 emissions produced by each family unit with no problem whatsoever. But fast forward to now. You probably live in a neighborhood with hundreds of other houses all bunched up together 100 miles from the nearest forest. Everyone has the average 1.5 cars in the garage and wouldn't know what an asparagus in a garden would even look like, much less how to grow one themselves. They have 3 televisions in the house, along with dozens of other appliances, sucking up electricity, and the air conditioner and heater are working 24/7, 365 days a year. Now, none of those things are necessarily bad, but when you add up the electrical load from thousands and millions of folks out there, you have to trace back to where all that electricity came from. The production of all that power has a huge carbon footprint, and you can't blame the electric industry. It's just feeding the needs of the populace. All those cars needed to be built, lots of carbon released there, and we're not even going to talk about smelting of all the steel and making all the plastic that goes into a car. And then there's the oil and gas industry, and it makes all the gross stuff it takes to make all those cars run every day. Zero emission vehicles sound fine and dandy, but it's still going to take a lot of industry to build those cars. Now when you go back and look at the difference, you'll see just how big a shift 100 years can make. And it's not really the big business and the Industrial Revolution made the world a bad place to be. It's millions of individuals that demand running water and central heat and air conditioning in their homes and 3 cars per family. Compared to the much more rural and agrarian lives our ancestors led, it's easy to see why CO2 emissions have gone through the roof in most societies. As a matter of fact, industry has been doing a lot of things to reduce their CO2 emissions over the last 20 years, but unfortunately, serving the needs of millions of people means they are trying to manage parts of 1 million carbon footprints all in one place, and there are only so many ways to cut back and still be able to produce the electricity and fuels that a modern society needs. In the end, it isn't XYZ Corporation that's just nonchalantly spewing CO2 into the atmosphere. It's you. Yes, there needs to be responsibility on the producers of steel and electricity and oil and gas to do everything they can to avoid waste and just being flat out messy. But those companies only exist to feed your appetites. And since we're all fighting the battle of the bulge in our waistlines as well, you're probably